Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Oscar. Happy birthday to you.
Woo!
Blow out the candle. Amen. You may be seated. Our dream is to one day not have this service. But we're going to keep having it because we got to keep resisting. We got to keep standing against. I don't know about you, but when I was watching the Latin Grammys,
Libertad y justicia para Oscar Lopez.
wow, I don't know about you, but I got goosebumps because you see, things are happening all over. All over. God has been raising the consciousness of people all over.
This letter was published October 26th. It's the 8th letter to his granddaughter, Karina. Dear Karina, we each decide our destiny and risk our souls according to the dictates of our conscience. Fear is always present in each moment, day and night. We learn to use it to our advantage. In Vietnam, for example, it was fear that helped me be cautious, attentive to everything around me, to unusual movements and sounds. Thanks to instinct, it was months, whole years that I survived, sniffing the air to be able to detect some danger. When some new soldier arrived to our battalion and I saw him showing off his strength or bravery, I would keep observing him. I realized that this was his way of impressing others, hiding the panic that he felt. Later, when it was his turn to enter combat, one of two things would happen. He would remain paralyzed, or he would act rashly. In either case, I would pull him aside and explain that we all felt fear and that it was normal. That what was important was to recognize it. I think that having been raised in the streets of Chicago was a good preparation for managing fear. Years later, when I was headed for prison in Marion, and I confronted for the first time what they call their sensory deprivation program, I had no idea, nor would I find, with whom I would live. They put me in a gang unit with the most dangerous gangsters in the whole country. No one can honestly say that they don't fear for their life in a place such as this. Incidentally, I recognized a pair of prisoners who had been with me in the prison in Leavenworth, and we looked out for each other. They knew that I did not come from the world of gangs and that I was a political prisoner. As soon as I learned that I would have only 15 minutes per month to speak by telephone, which in practice were even less, since they would often cut the calls or interrupt them, the punishment weighed me down. My mother was sick and elderly. She was the one who had kept me informed about my brothers and sisters and the rest of the family in Puerto Rico. The most painful was not being able to talk with my daughter, who was then a child. Since she barely knew me, she related little to me over the phone. When I had visits, they kept me from having physical contact with my family. I even remember the first time my mother visited me, your great-grandmother, who broke out in tears when she saw me shackled to the other side of the glass. I told her then that she had to be strong and contain her tears so as not to let the jailers know that this program had affected the whole family. From then on, when she visited me, I saw her press her lips together and contain her tears. She did not let one more tear fall in my presence. She was a brave Puerto Rican woman. Unlike the prison in Leavenworth, in Marion, they monitored or intercepted all of the correspondence and reading materials that I received. Sometimes it would take weeks or months until they delivered my letters, magazines, or newspapers. They would give everything to me all in one day. And the next day, they would come into my cell to inspect it and confiscate what they called an excess of paper. Many things which I still had not had time to read. Finally, it occurred to me how to save the newspapers, passing them out when they were first delivered to me, to the other prisoners. who bit by bit gave them back to me. The papers contain old news, but I read them all just the same. You always have to read, Karina. Reading serves to abate fear. I will discuss how to stave off loneliness some other day. In Resistance and in Struggle, your grandfather, Oscar Lopez Rioevras.
When the Reverend spoke about Ricky Martin, you have to think about what Oscar has become. And Oscar, people could say he is an iconic figure, and I think he has become that. But Rafael Cancel Miranda, who was the partner in the heroic action of 1954 with Lolita Lebron in Congress, I was speaking to him about 2 years ago. He says, Oscar has gone beyond history. He is now the emblematic figure of Puerto Rico. Now, emblematic is what flags do. They are the emblems, they are the symbols of people. That's what a flag is. So in many ways, when I was in this march, where there were 40 to 50,000 people, and this is estimated by the Puerto Rican police, when I was in this march, it felt kind of, just to think about, that you would have the head of the evangelical churches in Puerto Rico and the Archbishop of Puerto Rico, okay, and the heads of all the major denominations in Puerto Rico, all on one stage, giving their blessings to this gathering. When you saw that there were thousands of people from all walks of life, but also from every political persuasion in Puerto Rico. So when I think about this year, and I think that in Cuba, Oscar was given the highest award that is given to almost anyone in Cuba in September, and that his daughter was there to receive it. And then she could go to Ecuador just 2 weeks ago, and in actual fact present the president of Ecuador, President Correa, with a t-shirt of Oscar. When we could have Oscar's sort of the prisoner's life in prison played out in a drama in Mexico City where Lourdes was at, and this was just 3 weeks ago, when we could think on an international scenario, the impact that Ricky Martin and Draco Rosa and Calle 13 have, there's something obviously happening here. And more importantly, again, it reminds us of how you can become an emblematic figure. And so when we think about these things, not necessarily just in a spiritual sense, in the context of how people understand spirituality, but in the context of the human tradition, of the need for us to have something, someone who speaks to us in the way that we would like to be.